Should we start?
Okay. I think so. I think we can start. Salutations at large to our guests, to our participants who also have joined us, our audience. Good afternoon. I hope all of you are doing well this morning. I hope all of you are blessed. This afternoon. Welcome. We will be having a conversation today about public procurement in South Africa. I welcome you all. We are in a stage in South Africa where we see a lot of procurement issues. So, as a Genesis Business School, we have taken it upon us to invite experts on the topic so that we can have a fruitful discussion about what happens within the public sector, gain insight about what is happening with our tax money, and also just to learn from those who are part of the practitioners when it comes to public procurement. I welcome you all, and I will allow our guest speakers to kindly introduce themselves. I'll start with you, John. Tell us about yourself, who you are, your position, and thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm honored to be invited. You could have chosen anyone, but you stuck with me now for the period of as we spend here. But my name is John Modise. I'm a Senior Manager, Procurement Excellence and Governance at the Road Accident Fund. Just a bit of my history is that I'm about 22 years in the public procurement space, and 18 of which has been in managerial level and still counting. I was fortunate to be introduced into the procurement public space by starting at the job of a supplier database. Those that are old will know that we, in 1999, we then had the triple PFA, Preferential Procurement Framework Act. So that's where I started. I started at Land and Agricultural Bank as a supplier database administrator in 1999. You'll know that that's the year that, almost around the year that the guide into accounting supply chain management was then drafted or implemented. That's when I started and read through that. I've been in all positions within public procurement stages. Like I said, having started at the junior role to now being at the senior management level. I've been in management for, like I said, for 18 years. I must say I've touched all positions that one can think of within the procurement stage. But then I'm still learning. Procurement is vastly regulated and you learn every day. You'll see with the practice notes that are circulated that it's a regulated field that you constantly have to read and acquaint yourself with what is happening. So I'm now at the Road Accident Fund, like I said, and I've been at the Road Accident Fund for about 9 years, and I will be, I'm still there trying to make an impact in our public procurement space.
Thank you, my good sir, and we welcome you. Hopefully, we will be getting more knowledge about what is happening, not only in Road Accident Fund, but South Africa in general when it comes to public procurement.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, my sir. Mr. Sabata, can you kindly also just introduce yourself for the audience?
Thank you, Program Director. My name is Sabata Khweta, and as part of my preamble, I'll start with the genesis where I've started. I've started as a compliance officer in supply chain, wherein I was working at City of Makosana in Klerksdorp, where I've started to learn more about supply chain. So the time when supply chain was introduced, I was fortunate that we were piloted there as part of the MFMA supply chain chapter 11. So throughout those years, I was elevated as manager supply chain at the same city of Matosana. Thereafter, I moved to Mahalisota in Rustenburg, where I've started a unit because there was no procurement unit in Mahalisota. So I started procurement unit in Mahalisota, where I introduced all the systems that relates to supply chain. After that, I moved to City of Johannesburg, Department of Human Settlements, where I'm currently in, where I also started a procurement unit within the department as an assistant director, which is equivalent to the head of procurement. So basically, I've got the DNA of supply chain. Thanks.
Thank you, my good sir. My audience, you are also allowed to ask questions for our speakers. You have a chat session there next to you and a question and answer session. Please kindly make use of it. If you want to ask any question regarding public procurement, you are more than welcome. We will be touching on some relevant issues that we faced in South Africa regarding public procurement. Issues ranging from the new Public Procurement Act that was put into place, I think, last year. Some issues that are affecting public procurement that are linked into corruption. So please, you are more than welcome to ask any questions for our guests, and I'm sure they will give us valuable information regarding the knowledge that they have with regards to public procurement. But with as we start with anything that you have to start with, I think a good foundation is needed. So as we just starting with the discussion, maybe let's build a foundation and give people the insight of what public procurement is. John, if you kindly would allow me to ask you, what are the key principles that govern public procurement processes in South Africa?
Yeah. Thank you very much for that question, my good sir. As we know, the history of South Africa, I'll say pre-1994, we had a situation where public procurement was only focused or dedicated to large, wide contract companies in government, which then led to quite large inequalities in the country. What you then had was that with the new dispensation, the government had to address the issue of having to make public procurement inclusive, and so that to also assist the government with its mandate of socio-economic imbalances that then stem from the inequalities of the past. So currently, we were lucky that post the new dispensation, the government sought to constitute public procurement, and this was based on those challenges, and public procurement was then given a platform in our current constitution, which is section 217, which then speaks to a public procurement, which must then adhere to the principles which are fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective. So this is given credence in the Constitution, and these are what we call in the procurement area the 5 pillars of procurement, of public procurement. In that every entity that is contracting with the state, be it tender, be it quotations, be it whatever, must do so in the manner that is in accordance with the system that is fair, the system that is equitable, a system that is transparent and competitive, and as well as cost effective. When you talk about ethics, you talk about the fairness part of the public procurement, which is then highlighted in the Constitution. Equitable, you're talking about fair dealings and impartiality when you deal with the public funds. Transparency, you're talking about accountability and reporting. When you are engaged in procurement systems competitive, you're talking about making a space or environment where all entities that wants to do business with government can compete for those opportunities and so forth. Cost effective is obviously your value for money, where you are then supposed to then get what the public funds has been expended for. When you procure, you must be able to pin down or pinpoint what is that has been spent, which is the taxpayers' money. So that's where the procurement, public procurement, gets the opportunity to be expressed in our constitution, and that is a constitution, and that's what every public procurement must adhere to in formulation and drafting of their policies and your standard operating model. Those are the 5 pillars of procurement that the policies and whatever procurement is doing must adhere to.
Thank you, Mr. Modise. I welcome also Dudun Lovu. You are kindly welcome, ma'am. Mr. Sabata, can I just, I hear Mr. Modise here speaking about the 5 pillars of public procurement. Do you think as a country we've stuck to them? And if not, what can we do to improve as a state when it comes to public procurement?
Thanks, Program Director. Maybe as a precursor to, because my colleague John has mentioned section 217.
217.
Yes.
Yes.
So we need to also zoom in, because we are talking about government institution. The most important part is section 239 of the Constitution, which deals with all the organs of state, national, provincial, as well as local. That is section 239 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. So it means, because now we are talking about organs of state, and once we are talking about organs of state, it means we are talking about institutions that are highly legislated. And because of the brief of today, we are talking about procurement. That's why we are talking about section 217, which is key. Before you can contract, you must know that you are a natural person working within a juristic person, which is an organ of state, that you need to adhere to different prescripts of the legislation. That is why John was mentioning that before, when we are contracting, you must make sure that everything sticks to the principles. Because if ever you sidestep one principle, I can tell you now, already the process is flawed. Yeah. And Auditor General already will be on your neck, because they will say, now, you have flooded the processes. You cannot jump fairness, equitable, transparent, cost-effective, and competitiveness. All those processes, they need to be followed to the latter, or else all other agencies are looking at what are your processes, why did you sidestep that particular process. And remember, currently, the UIFW, unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure, are skyrocketing. The reason being, processes have been flawed. So we cannot afford to sidestep processes by not using all the principles of fairness, equity, transparency, and cost effective, so that we don't give a chance to Auditor General to come, because everything is done according to the book. So it is important as supply chain practitioners or procurement practitioners that we stick to the rules of engagement. Because now of late, like you said, Chairperson, that procurement now is being red flagged, whether by the Hawks, SIU, Auditor General, we need to make sure that whatever we are doing, we follow the processes. Because if ever we don't follow the processes, there is another leg within, especially where I'm working in the municipal space. If ever you don't follow processes, the internal auditors, they are going to report the matter to the municipal public accounts that this department is not following procurement processes. That is why our UIFWs are skyrocketing. And in the same impact, if ever they can find that there was a negligence that was done by officials, it will move to another stage, which we call Municipal Disciplinary Financial Board. Yeah. So as government officials, especially in procurement, we must make sure that we follow the processes without dodging anything. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. I completely agree with you. And unfortunately, procurement is where South Africa loses most of its finances. A lot of money goes missing when it comes to procurement, and it's sometimes flagged as fruitless and wasteful expenditure, as you've also alluded. Good afternoon, Dr. Ndlovu. I hope you are well and blessed this afternoon. Can you just kindly introduce yourself to the audience and just give us information about your position and what you do?
Oh, no, thank you, Chair. As we have alluded, my name is Ududu Ndlovu. Hello?
Yes, you are audible.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, my name is Dudu Ndlovu. I am a senior manager in respect of supply chain management from Umsunduzi municipality. Yes, that's me. I'm in the local government space. I do have a doctorate in terms of business administration. So I am Dr. Dudu Ndlovu. I'm happy to be in this platform today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll kindly correct myself and add the doc there in the beginning. While I still have you, based on your vast experience since you've been in the space of public procurement for a while, what are the common challenges that you faced with regards to procurement?
I think the previous speakers, they've already alluded to some of the issues that have been flagged in terms of supply chain management. One of them being the issue of the UIFW, which is increasing on a yearly basis, both from local government, provincial government. We've seen it in terms of the entire South Africa, in terms of the amount that is escalating. Over and above that, from my observation as an SM practitioner, the issue of legislation. Currently, there is a lot of pieces of legislation that one has to consult for one transaction. It has been mentioned that there is the issue of the constitution, of which we all agree. There is, from the local government perspective, there is MFMA, which is the Municipal Finance Management Act. You still have to ensure that you comply with it. There's a triple PFA, which is the Preferential Procurement Act. Also, you are expected to comply with. There are regulations that are issued in terms of the triple PFA. There are regulations are issued in terms of MFMA by National Treasury. There is CIDB Act, there is CIDB regulations, there are Treasury circulars, instruction notes, and a whole lot of things. So there is quite a number of pieces of legislation that one has to consult to transact in the procurement space. So with it, it means practitioners, you have to be ensure that you are familiar with all of these documents so that you are able then to comply for each and every transaction, which has been a problem for most of SM practitioners. And also there are some gray areas in terms of the Act itself. Hence, there is an introduction of the Public Procurement Act. But I think without also getting much into details, but there is a lot that needs to be done in terms of ensuring that there is capacity in terms of SM practitioners training and also understanding in terms of the roles and functions, and also what is expected from them and what is it that they need to comply with, and how can they then be assisted in terms of making sure that they do understand and they do align themselves in terms of what is expected from them. So there's a lot that one needs to know in terms of SCM, so that we can then ensure that there is a reduction in terms of the UFW, and we are not also adding as SM practitioners. We are able to advise correctly in terms of our institutions so that they are able to comply. Let me end there, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Yes.
Yes, yes, just to also add on what my sister Dudu is saying, I think currently in South Africa we have a big issue of corruption. We cannot talk about the challenges in public procurement without really highlighting corruption as the center and the key challenge that we have in public procurement, which also go hand in hand with fraud. We are at the stage where, with all that is happening, it's no longer about appointing the best bidder, but it's about appointing the best briber because of things that are happening. I think that is quite an issue which is highlighted by non-compliance with the supply chain or procurement prescripts that are in place, and lack of knowledge. My sister Dudu indicated the issue of capacity. I think we have a lack of proper knowledge in supply chain, and I'm talking also about the skill and capacity. I don't think our custodian, which is the National Treasury, is doing enough in terms of capacitating supply chain or public procurement practitioners. Because if you don't love procurement, you end up not just going like on one lane. You can't learn anything. It's up to you to then go out and see what are the new prescript, what does it impact on supply chain and things like that. And there is no training that is initiated. If there is, it's quite minimal. It doesn't beef up, or it doesn't give the supply chain practitioners the strength to then stand up by themselves. And there is also inadequate planning that you have as a challenge, which you find that the majority of planning by some of the public entities, their planning is not aligned to the budget that they have or have put aside for whatever commodity or product that they have. And I think since I've spoken about corruption, I'm sorry to be quite. I'm going to be quite strong on this, because I believe that it starts rotting from the head. There is lack of accountability and support structures and from the top of our government, because you find that corruption has now been dressed as a political issue instead of a criminal issue, because the law is clear. Corruption is corruption. If you steal from the public, the law must deal with it, but it's being politicized, and that then tends to then eradicate good governance in government, because you have to be very strong and to speak up about supply chain discrepancies, especially corruption. You speak about it tomorrow, you have lost your job. So it's what supply chain practitioners are facing. Then you are faced with having to keep silent when the whole public procurement, which is your profession, is being dragged in the mud. So those are the challenges. Unethical behavior. We used to have people in supply chain that are principled, But now you have people in supply chain that wants to get rich. They want to get rich quicker scheme, which then takes away the pure key role of what supply chain must play. Supply chain is at the center of service delivery in South Africa. Yet we are prone, we are experiencing public protest every day in South Africa. There is somewhere there is a protest, and when you zoom in into those protests have to do with service delivery. What must ensure service delivery is proper, effective, efficient public procurement, which is then not looked at and not given quite a platform in terms of protecting the public. So that's the problem. And Ms. Dudu also indicated the issue of not having a uniform regulation. We are hoping and praying that the new public procurement will introduce a uniform way, the uniform regulation in terms of how we deal with public procurement, because Ms. Dudu is right. Ms. Ndlovu is correct that we are very fragmented. And you'll imagine that as public entities or municipal entities, if we were to have one a central way of procuring, which will then ensure that we are able to have power in negotiating of contracts, and we can get a value for money instead of what is currently happening. You find that entities are just next door to each other, and they want one item, but then they'll go in different tenders to then procure that service. And what that then does is to rob the public of having to negotiate better prices, having to monitor value for money and the delivery of services. So those are, in my personal opinion, serious challenges when it comes to public procurement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Modise. And also, you speaking about those who have been trying to champion corruption in public procurement. You also acknowledge Babita Dokoran also in her fight of trying to end corruption in the procurement space as the panel and as the Genesis. Yes, as well as Paul Molife from Ekuruleni. We acknowledge those who have championed ethics in the procurement space and auditing space as well. May they rest in peace. But continuing with the discussion, maybe the good dog would, I heard you speaking about legislations and you going deep into it, Mr. Modise. My dog, can you kindly maybe also, if possible, turn on your camera so that the audience can see who you are. When they see you on the road, they can know who gave them the kind knowledge. But if possible, can you just go into details about, or not in extensive detail, but I heard you speaking about the legislation. So what does the new Procurement Act bring to South Africans? Is there an aspect of hope? And I know it hasn't been put into proclamation as yet, but what does it bring to ordinary South Africans? Should we be hopeful about what the Act is going to do with regards to all the issues that we face with regards to public procurement? Thank you.
Thank you. For me, and I do believe for other practitioners as well, it brings hope. Simply because the fragmentation that is currently happening with the current legislation, where you have to consult different pieces of legislation, where we find ourselves, other colleagues have to misinterpret the issues of legislation and the implementation thereof. I think with the implementation of one single law or piece of legislation that will then regulate the entire procurement space. Let me apologize. I'm using my phone. I had an issue with my laptop, so I'm being disturbed by some of the calls. So what I was saying is by the introduction of this law, we are hoping that we are then going to be consulting in one piece of legislation. That means there will be uniformity. So what I do from the city of Pietermaritzburg, when you go to the city of Johannesburg, you must find the same standardized processes, or even the bidding documents, or even how we then procure goods and services. So, and also the way issues that we had identified with the current legislation, and we are hoping that they are going to be addressed in terms of the regulations that will be issued by National Treasury that will then inform the implementation of the Act. So we are really hopeful in terms of what we can then achieve, and also what is being championed with the Public Procurement Act is the issue of ethics. As you have heard from the previous speakers, that currently, yes, it is our profession, and how it's been dragged in the mud is really frightening even for me, because I am a professional and I hope to be in this profession for a longer time. And also the new colleagues that are coming in, and they are coming in with this cloud in terms of the supply chain management. So it is also championing the issue of ethics and governance issues, where we are going to be really looking in terms of how do we behave as SM practitioners, as much as some of us are still honest and all of that. And unfortunately, we do find that no one is listening in terms of what the SM practitioners are saying. As we have seen what has been happening, even those who are reporting, you end up even feeling sorry for yourself. Why did you even bother to report? So we are really hoping that with this legislation, we are going to be guided in terms of ensuring that the issue of ethics in the public procurement space is being emphasized. And one issue that we also need to look at is the issue of professionalizing supply chain management. At this stage, anyone who does not find a job, they just want to go to SCM because that is where things are happening. So we really need to pay attention in terms of that as well, making sure that people that they are people who are well trained and they are skilled and they know what they are doing, so that we reduce the number of people who are just taking chances with SEM as a profession. So for me, those are the issues that I'm looking forward to in terms of the implementation of the Act. And also one of the things that was highlighted by the previous speaker is the issue of National Treasury, or the procurement, the office of the procurement, chief procurement officer, not playing a closer role in terms of the space. When this office was introduced, we had high hopes that not just local government, but procurement as a whole will then be supported closely by this office. But it's really not happening. You will find one circular there and there, but even the implementation there of that circular, someone needs to be trained. You cannot just expect me, because I can read the sentence and understand that all of us we do understand. That is why you end up, this person, this is how he's implementing this thing, that person, this is, because it's how they understood. And there's no one who's coming forward to say that, okay, this is what we are going to be issuing now. So this is what needs to be implemented. You will recall that a few years back, I'm sorry to be jumping around the place. A few years back, there was an issue with the regulations that were issued in 2017, where they were then invalidated by the court. When the minister was then instructed to look into that issue and issue new regulations, there were issues at a very short space of time where practitioners were like so confused. How now do we implement these new regulations, and what needs to happen? And the workshops were then the regulations were issued in December. Everything was done in December. By January, on the 17th of January or 16th of January, we needed to implement these new regulations. And seriously, it was a havoc. So we really need National Treasury or even the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer to start playing an active role. They should not be standing there and judging how municipalities or how government departments are performing if they are not playing their role in terms of supporting those municipalities, supporting those government departments. You must not come at the end. You must be part of the process so that we can ensure that we all understand and we are all aligned in terms of what needs to be happening. Let me end it there for now. Thank you.
Chairperson.
Chairperson, your mic is muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, thank you, Doc. We understand your issues there. You can maybe just switch off your phone and maybe come back the camera off the laptop if you are comfortable with that. That's also totally okay. We do understand. Mr. Sabata, maybe just to bring you into the discussion, I see Osiswa Ndladu, I hope I pronounced that correctly, has a question about consequence management and corruption in supply chain. Just to put a microscope into the city of Johannesburg, where you are currently in, what has the city done with regards to consequence management and corruption within supply chain?
Okay, thanks, Chair. Like I indicated initially that in an event, because let me start first. As officials of the municipality, in fact, all the municipalities, we need to comply with MFMA Section 78, which says all officials, whether senior or junior or general worker, we need to make sure that we prevent corruption and unauthorized irregular expenditure. All of us within the municipality. So that is why it is important within the municipality or within all the municipalities across the country that we need to make sure that we workshop all colleagues who are directly involved or indirectly involved about Section 78 of the Municipal Finance Management Act, wherein it is their responsibility. Because if ever they don't adhere to that particular section, they are going to be held personally liable. Because once the auditors come and check that there was malfeasance that was performed here, they will be reported, it will serve at MPEG, and also it will go to Municipal Financial Disciplinary Board. So if ever they will get that a particular person was negligent, consequence management has to be effected. So it is important, before consequence management can be done, we need to make sure that we workshop all the colleagues within the procurement space to understand the implications and that are dire within if ever you don't adhere to rules of engagement. So it is important for all the persons of interest within supply chain or procurement to understand, especially in the local government space, to understand Section 78 of Municipal Finance Management Act, because it is important. It doesn't also say only the accounting officer. It says whoever is involved there must be disciplined or must make sure that he or she understand the processes. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Modise. Before you continue, before you say what you want to say, can you just also expand on the structures put into place for consequence management, your MPAC and your disciplinary financial sectors, and then you can also just add on what you wanted to say.
Yes. Thank you very much. Maybe let me add on what I wanted to say first, because you asked Ms. Lulu about the Public Procurement Act, which we are looking forward to. I just wanted to go through a bit in terms of what the important issues that are highlighted there. This act seeks to regulate the public procurement. It seeks to prescribe a framework for preferential procurement in terms of how preferential procurement will be implemented. And it will provide for other connected matters. But what is important is the uniform approach of procurement, which we are keenly calling for and hoping for that the Act will respond to. That will then allow us as procurement practitioners to then ensure that we operate in an environment that is consistent, because we seem to be doing things in silos in the public procurement space. That's why you go to different entities and you read their procurement policies. They are differently compiled, and they attend to different acts which are fragmented everywhere. But then this act will then give us that opportunity to then put the uniform approach on procurement. And it seeks to also enhance transparency and accountability by introducing stringent measures to combat corruption. That's what it's promising. Then it also talks about driving economic transformation. And what is key, what I love most about it, is that it talks about embracing technological advancement, which is something that we've spoken about before we started here, that the supply chain policy, our systems in all entities are fragmented. That's why we are not singing from the same hymn. You have public entities that are using SAP as their operating model. I'm sure there are also different systems in a municipal area, and others are using Sage in public sector and things like that. And when you look at how these systems integrate with the CSD, Central Supply Database, that we have been regulated to use for procurement as public practitioners, it's not integrated. So you then use CSD to get service providers to then approach for opportunities, and then you have to go back to your system and input the information of a supplier in the system. So that's the current situation that is quite dire, and it doesn't really, it will not produce the result of consistency that we are looking for. But then also to go back to what Ms. Ndlovu said, and the Office of the Public Procurement in National Treasury has not really achieved much, if one could say. It has actually been lukewarm, because we don't get a joy in terms of why that office exists. I'll give an example, a simple example. You speak to myself and Mr. Sabata, who between ourselves, we have about 50 years of experience in supply chain. I'm not that old, but I'm just saying the years that he has, the years that I have. But then when you have a supply chain issue that you want to highlight, or you want something to be clarified, you have to engage a National Treasury practitioner, who is the person that was employed
I think we lost Mr. Modesta there. Yes, Mr. Modesta.
I lost you a bit there.
Yes.
Yeah, as I was saying, you then find that the people that are supposed to be custodians of making sure that we do things in a regulated manner, and they're supposed to even explain what a certain prescripts mean, are people that don't have enough experience and have never dealt with what you are asking them to help you with. So that then says we don't have enough the required skill at the Office of the National Treasury. And also in supply chain, I like what Ms. Ndlovu also indicated, that in supply chain, I think supply chain is one of the very strange areas or fields where you go to school and you study for supply chain and you get qualification, and you're going to then report to the CFO, who has never studied procurement in any module of his education. that becomes a problem, because then you then if they have a situation. I respect finance people so much, but what we are faced with, hence the supply chain is highly regulated. Is a person, we need a person who understands procurement, who studied procurement, who understands what, when a certain rule is put in place, what is that rule meant to achieve. And then you then have to apply your mind into there is something that you need to do in procurement, but you have to go and convince a CFO who then has a limited knowledge, and which is not a problem, is not a personal problem to the CFO, but it becomes cumbersome to have to explain an obvious thing to somebody that is supposed to be your boss. That's the one other challenge that we are facing, because the CPO was supposed to have made sure that supply chain have expertise in entities. We have people with who have been in supply chain for many years and have practical examples on how to attend to issues and address matters. For instance, now there are very few companies that have chief procurement officers in their executive level. Now you have an ESCO, which will then have to talk about what are the needs of an entity, but you don't have a procurement expert that is going to then advise them on what strategies, how long it will take, and all those things. I understand finance are good in finance, but procurement should be good in indicating what procurement should be doing, and we don't have that voice. You look at any company or entity that seeks to appoint board members, you find that the board members that are there, there's no one with the procurement expertise. That's why then at the end of the day, what are you going to have? You're going to have, because there is no requisite qualification or not qualification, experience or knowledge of supply chain, you have decisions that have to go back and forth instead of just having to advise the executive or the board on what we are faced with. Currently, all the issues that we have in supply chain, in public procurement, tied down to supply chain in the government, I mean to say, they are related to supply chain. But is supply chain escalated to the level of decision making? No, it's not. It's just left as a support unit that also that is just there to be told what needs to be done. And that becomes an issue, because then instead of attending to problems while before they happen, you are then reactionary, because then you're dealing with tenders that have been irregularly awarded. But then if there was somebody in the decision-making body of the entity, you'll then have to be accountable and indicate why didn't you see this coming and things like that. Now, and what is quite funny, my former chairperson of a board member from one of the state entities used to say to me, you know, supply chain is quite a strange, very challenging field. When you go to the cemetery of procurement, you're going to read the heads of all the CFOs and the CEOs that have died. And on their headstones is written supply chain and procurement irregularities. With that in mind, why has supply chain not been escalated to a decision-making role in the upper structures of a company? It's just beyond me, because then we're going to constantly having to deal with being reactionary to procurement challenges instead of being proactive in addressing these issues. Sorry.
Yes. I hear you, Mr. Modise, but I want you to touch on the relevant bodies now, just to address Tabelo's question.
Yes. The reason I started also with the Public Procurement Act, I saw it introduces a public procurement office, which will then be directly issues, which I think it's a very good take from the Act. And somewhere when I read it, it also spoke about procurement tribunal. I'm not quite sure what that is going to do, but then I'm thinking as a tribunal, it will then have to deal with the what you are now asking me in terms of discrepancies or irregularities, or how to deal with corruption and all those things within procurement space. Can you just a bit refresh me also on your question?
Yes, so the question wants to address the relevant bodies when it comes to what's this irregularities when it's linked to procurement and supply chain management. I know part of the reporting goes to MPAC. MPAC is part of where the discussions come into place. I know there's a finance disciplinary board, I think, as well. Just to unpack on those. Yes.
On procurement, to be honest with you, this what the Public Procurement Act is introducing will be something new in procurement. We don't have a tribunal or a professional body that regulates the conduct of supply chain practitioners. We only have National Treasury as the custodian of how we conduct ourselves as supply chain practitioners. But in terms of if you see somebody receiving bribe from supply chain, that is left to disciplinary codes and conduct or disciplinary policies of entities, and which then becomes problematic, because then we are left in having to deal with those kind of disciplinary issues as entities. And if you are close to the executive or something like that, you might then just get a slap on the face and nothing happens to you. So we don't have such. But I read on the public procurement that there is now going to be also a form of debarment where people are going to be banned for a certain period for having involved in irregularities and so forth. So those are the things that I think the Act was introduced to talk to, because they currently are just everywhere. If you are in procurement, you just have to be taken through disciplinary procedures of an entity for having transgressed a triple PFA or any procurement prescript.
Thank you. I see your hand, Doc. Before I allow you to also just say your part with regards to the Act, I know we speak of we are also sticking on the conversation of the Act, by the way. I know we speak of South Africa having one of the best legislations or constitutions around. The implementation is then becoming a problem. But doesn't the Act maybe create over-regulation, or is it going to bring actually good things with regards to procurement? Doc?
Thank you. Maybe before I attend to that, let me also speak about what was also asked in the group. I think the previous speaker did respond to it. That currently we do not have something that pertains to SCM directly in terms of any issues that might be picked up, including the irregular expenditure and all of that. But we are currently dependent on the MPAC, the audit committee as a structure as well. Internal audit, and also there is a disciplinary board for financial misconduct for each and every municipality. So the cases that pertains to financial misconduct are then directed to the disciplinary board, and they are also being dealt with, like the previous speaker has indicated, by our normal disciplinary department within each municipality. But we have seen that the MPAC has been empowered in terms of authority, in terms of dealing with these issues, and where they do not have capacity, they will then bring in internal audits to assist in terms of the investigations to find the root cause, and also who's then responsible or who must be held accountable for that specific transaction. So internal audit will then with their forensic department will then carry out the investigation, come back and report to the MPAC. MPAC will then take a decision in terms of how the matter should be dealt with concerning any financial misconduct, which in most cases, all the SCM related cases will then form part of that. We have had such cases in our municipality and neighboring municipalities where we have seen that even though consequence management is still an issue, but there is an attempt in saying that we have seen people losing their jobs, we have seen people going to jail, but it is not enough. Why I'm saying it's not enough, yes, it is okay to hold SCM practitioners accountable or even municipal employees, but when are we going to be holding the politicians accountable, and who's doing that? So at this particular stage, I can tell you right now that I've seen a lot of my colleagues losing their jobs, and I've seen them losing everything that they have. At some point, it is good when the person has done wrong, because we have to learn. We have to know that we have chosen this career and it is a profession. It's not a money-making scheme. So we have to take that accountability. But at the same time, it must not only focus on the employees and also on the junior employees. Even senior officials, they have to take accountability. So we must not find these small fish and go after them. Let us go after everyone who has done wrong or who has committed crime. So everyone must be held accountable. So what is good for me must be good for everyone else, so that we can all start appreciate and take our profession and give it the respect that it deserves. Because seriously, SCM is one of those, because service delivery, it cannot happen without SCM. So everything has to start and end there. So it's a cycle. So if you are not paying attention to what is correct, then we are going to be losing this country. We've already seen what is happening, the issues of service delivery and all of that. Chairperson, if you do not mind to remind me your question. You are muted.
Sorry about that. My question was with regards to the Act. Does it create a form of over-regulations, a problem that we keep seeing in South Africa? Does the Act bring in a lot of red tape, which is good with regards to supply chain management, and would we have maybe more administrative burden with regards to it? We are still focusing on the Act in itself.
No, from where I am, the Act, because currently it is currently fragmented, it's rigid and all of that. But with the new Act, yes, there will still be a lot of things that we need to ensure that we comply with. But what we are appreciating is that it is coming with standardization and also uniformity. Yes, there will still be a lot of processes, and one of the things that are being introduced by the Act is the issue of conflict management. They currently, all the municipalities, in terms of their own internal policies, they are given that authority to deal with appeals and objections. And with the Act, there is going to be a centralization of that, which might also assist in terms of curbing the irregularities, simply because if the municipality is the one who has issued a tender and you are still going to be the one who's deciding on a dispute, then there might be an issue there. So the issue of dispute mechanism that is being introduced by the Act, we are really going to be appreciating that, especially in terms of fast-tracking the issues and also limiting the issues that are currently going to the court, where the service provider is not happy, they just go straight to the court without observing the internal processes of the municipality or any other mechanisms that can assist in terms of fast-tracking the dispute resolution. So that is also coming with the Act, and we are really appreciating that. So from where I am seated, I do not think currently, as we are over-regulated because of the number of pieces of legislation that one must consult in terms of processing any transaction. But with the Act, as it is going to also be including the preferential procurement policy as well. So it is going to be then reducing the number of legislation that will be consulting as SM practitioners. So it is going to be an Act, then it is going to be the regulations that will then say that guide us in terms of the implementation of the Act. So I do not think that the incoming Act is going to be over-regulating the space, but it is still having those internal controls issues that we still need to ensure that they are being implemented in terms of our processes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And that is the Procurement Bill Act 28 of 2024. Mr. Sabata, I have a question here from Superior Hadebe, who's asking what has happened to officials who nominated a tender of the Lillian Goy Street. What is happening with regards to that? Maybe you can share your insights on that one.
Thanks, Chair. Like I said, when I started, I'm at Department of Human Settlements, and that particular transaction happened at another sister entity, which is JRA. What I know, they were following processes that currently are still unfolding. So I don't have more information regarding that particular transaction. It's happening at Johannesburg Roads Agency, which is our municipal entity.
Okay. Then just a follow-up question. How significant is the role of capacity building and skills development when it comes to improving procurement? Would it maybe is the issue of maladministration based on lack of capacity or lack of skills? Can you just give us an insight on that one?
What is currently happening within the city? All officials that are directly or indirectly involved in supply chain are encouraged to register with a Wits University wherein they are doing MFMEs, particularly supply chain. So all the officials are encouraged to attend that program, and also the UCT program. And again, on quarterly basis, our group strategic supply chain, they are conducting workshops on engaging officials on latest supply chain processes. So in terms of capacity, City of Johannesburg, we are getting there, and we are trying by all means to comply.
Okay, thank you. Mr. John, can you just give us an insight of the role of the auditor, maybe for those who do not know, the role of the auditor when it comes to auditing supply chain management, from the processes that you said, the auditing that the Auditor General does, from your auditors to the Auditor General?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think what is important in a department as the procurement practitioner is to have a close relation with your internal audit. Internal audit is supposed to assist you proactively to deal with and address matters before the AG comes with the external auditing, so that at least by that time, when the external auditors come from AG, you have already gotten your house in order. But then if the relationship is not good, imagine you're working for the same company. Remember, a good bad finding on procurement, it becomes a good find or something to be congratulated on if you are an internal audit. So you'll then be seen to be working because you are actually seeing coming up with bad findings. But then I think we need to move from there in terms of saying internal audit should also be capacitated with people that understand procurement, because it's difficult to audit something that you don't know. because I've had in my experience where they sent an auditor without experience, and when he comes and asks me about certain things, I then ask, have you then read the supply chain policy first? Because this what you are auditing is it's complying with our supply chain policy. So I think we will do a good when we then also get people that are going to be focused in procurement, especially as auditors, to be people that have already had some sense of studying of supply chain. But it is important to have auditing, my good sir, because if you don't have that, it takes away one of your critical checks and balances in procurement. Because as much as we like to think that we are expert, we do sometimes trust so much of our subordinates, only to find that things are happening there that you will not be privy to. Because you can imagine if I have to sign about 50 contracts in a week, there are those that I have to have a relationship of trust with my coordinates, in terms of saying, I know they're going to do a diligent job. So the audit then helps me in terms of picking up some of those things that I will not have foreseen or rushed through, basing my judgment on trusting my colleagues, so to say. So that's the importance of having that relationship with the internal audit, because when Auditor General comes, things must be in place, and they don't play. It's a finding, and you're going to then be in the bad books, and might also jeopardize your job, having transgressed on procurement prescripts. So yeah, it is important to have that relationship internally, so that you then also only work as a company that has to keep the whole entity that you both working for in good books, not being fined one thing when Auditor General then comes with its external auditing.
Thank you, sir. Just to go back to Mr. Sabata, and by the way, we encourage ethics when we do facilitate procurement heterogenesis. So it's part of what we are pushing. But just to come back to you, Mr. Sabata, I know part of the city of Johannesburg is using e-procurement as its technological ways of supply chain management. What is the role of technology from your side when it comes to procurement?
Thanks, Chair. Currently, City of Johannesburg has introduced the e-procurement, which is still at infancy stage, because it has different modules, where it started with uploading the acquisition plans or demand plans on the system. So it will be a system that will keep on being improved. But at the moment, we're still at the demand plan stage, where everything, all the acquisition plans of the entire city, including municipal entities, are uploaded in the e-procurement. So going forward, all the tenders and RFQs, they will be automated, but it is step by step at the moment. So we are getting there, like what John was saying, that National Treasury, they are also will be coming with their own processes that might conflict one another, but let's hope the Public Procurement Act will start to streamline the digitization of public procurement.
Thank you. I have also a question here from Melody. Maybe Doctor would help us with that. With what actions can a service provider take when they have been unfairly terminated and have tried all possible avenues to get reinstated, and those avenues have not been met? They have been silenced. What avenues can they take, Doc?
If ever a service provider is an aggrieved person, there are processes that they must follow. They will have to write to the group supply chain head, where they will start to say, I've applied for this particular project and I didn't get my result, or I was unfairly I was unfairly disqualified. So the process will start, and then they will not take all the tender documents. They will only concentrate on that particular bid that he submitted or she submitted, so that they can see what really transpired. So it is important, if ever there is an aggrieved bidder, they must write to relevant channels within the city or a particular department to indicate that they are not happy about a particular process. Because it is important so that everyone is treated fairly and everything must be transparent. Remember, we started by saying Section 217, everything must be transparent and it must be also be fair. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Modis, I saw your hand was up.
Yes. I wanted to also add on that, and I'm glad that my good sir indicated it, that in everything within supply chain or procurement, there is a constitutional basis of how parties must be treated. So unfairly terminated, the constitution is on your side. What becomes the basis of the platform of discussion that becomes how was the service level agreement or contract put in place, because that needs to be followed in terminating of services. So if the terms conditions of the contract were followed, then it might be problematic to then try to justify saying the contract was terminated unfairly. But then the contract should be watertight in terms of indicating were there breaches, were the breach process followed in terms of addressing issues, because to just unilaterally, a company unilaterally coming and terminating a contract is illegal. The law will be on your side if that is the case. But then those are the steps. Since I agree with my colleague, Mr. Sabata, that internally you can escalate, but then really you will get some joy, because if you fight an entity, majority of the time you find that you'll be sidelined. So maybe you need somebody external. The court will be your foundation in terms of raising the matter to say, okay, I have this contract and I have been servicing the contract, and these are the terms of the contract, and now I'm faced with this issue of having been unfairly terminated. The law will then take its course. So it's not going to be something of a favor. You are done a favor, you are being listened to. No, rely on the law and apply the law where you are faced with that predicament, because no one should take the law upon their hands and just terminate the contract without valid reason. Since we went through the procurement process, we appointed you, and you met all what we requested. You've been delivering, and now we are failing to uphold the end of the bargain. You have the courts to then go and attend to it. And just to add on that, it's one of those things that we are hoping that this PPA will also be strict on, since they are now introducing this procurement tribunal, to then say, can the service providers also go to the tribunal if they are being unfairly treated, because sometimes poor souls, because they need business, they are treated as if they are beggars, while we are shielding ourselves as procurement practitioners and acting as having the law, being the law unto ourselves. So the Constitution is clear in terms of how you relate in public procurement space. There must be fairness, there must be impartiality, there must be equitable practice, there must be cost effective, there must be competition that is open to all the service providers. So you are not doing anyone a favor by having a tender in government or in public space. You have applied for it, you qualified to do it, we have seen your specifications or proposals, you can do it. You must be allowed to do it without any fear or favor, because the law should cover you.
Thank you very much. My good doc, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. No, I have been covered by the previous colleagues. Just to add that in terms of there is a provision. Once we have exhausted the internal processes, if the service provider is aggrieved, there is a provision to also escalate your matter to provincial treasury. So each and every province, they have their treasury. So you can then, which is a cheaper way before you can exercise your constitutional right of going to the court, because we know that courts, they are an expense. So you spend a lot of money fighting there for years. So there is that provision in terms of SCM policies and also in terms of the MFMA regulations to also escalate the matter to provincial treasury so that they can also mediate in terms of the service provider and also that relevant organ of the state. So there is that provision. And also, as it has been alluded to, the new Procurement Act also does have those provisions in terms of a tribunal where both parties will be able then to take their matter there and be dealt with in a costly, in not so expensive manner, because this tribunal will then be paid by the state, so you will not be paying to go there unless you want to have a representation in terms of your attorney or your lawyer in terms of arguing your matter. But those provisions are taken care of in terms of the new act and also in terms of the current act as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. While I still have you, I just want to ask a question, and this comes on the basis of we've seen what has been happening in South Africa regarding emergency procurement. For example, the flooding issue that happened in the Eastern Cape. There were issues there with regarding to procuring housing and what for them. We have now a water crisis in Johannesburg, where you see a lot of people getting tenders for those water tanks, but some of them are not done properly. So, what are the risks of emergency procurement that we normally face in supply chain management?
Yes, you are touching a very critical and important point of emergency. We are calling it Regulation 36 simply because it is provided for as Regulation 36 in terms of the MFMA regulations. It is also provided for, there is a provision in municipalities' SCM policies. So there has been a lot of abuse in terms of that area. If you can see the auditor's reports, they have pointed that out in terms of deviations. We're calling it deviations and emergency work, where for something that should have been planned for, simply because someone failed to plan, now they are treating it as an emergency. So Auditor General has been raising a lot of those as invalid deviations. And once it is raised as an invalid deviation, it means now it must be regarded as irregular expenditure. So someone now has to account in terms of that. But what we have seen happening from the space is that practitioners are making provisions in terms of acquiring the panels for your day-to-day operations and for service delivery as well. We have seen that there is a use of framework agreements in a lot of the organs of the state, municipalities, provincial departments. They are now depending much on framework agreements. What is happening is that even if you have an emergency, if you have that framework agreement, you are not then invoking your Regulation 36 because you do have a contract that we call as and when required basis. So it's just have to look in terms of your spending, just to do your spend analysis and see how do you often acquire certain items or commodities. Once you have that information, now you know that if you do not have a contract and you've been acquiring it on a regular basis, that means you need to put it on a contract. But because you do not want to commit or bind the municipality, you then put the terms and conditions that as and when I require this product, I will then have a contract in place. That means I will only come to you if I need this product. So it has protected a number of departments or municipalities in terms of reducing a number of emergencies. Even those water takers, we have seen municipalities and government departments acquiring on a 3-year basis to say that if I do happen to need a water taker, I must have a readily approved, acquired contract followed an SCM process. So by doing that, we are trying to reduce a number of emergencies where now we are also not complying with Section 217 of the Constitution. Remember that even if it's an emergency, you still need to present your case to say that within these 5 pillars, why you did not then satisfy any of them. If it's a real emergency, something happened at night, you really need to then be able to detail that experience to say that this is what happened. That is why then in answering that, we are saying, let us utilize those as and when contracts, as and when basis. That means you might have that contract and you might use it twice in the 36 months, but at least you are protected and you have also complied with Section 217. And also in terms of the price, you are able to then negotiate the market-related price so that you can then realize value for money for whatever that you are spending onto. So it is a critical point. We have seen that there is a focus in terms of Auditor General, in terms of scrutinizing what is being acquired in terms of Regulation 36. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Hey, but we normally see that the pricing is manipulated, especially with the water tanks issue that is currently on the news. Mr. Sabata, just to get an opinion from you, there's a question saying that what measures and strategies can government put in place to ensure effective implementation of procurement processes without deviations?
Okay, maybe before I can come to that, we cannot just talk about the Regulation 36 without again mentioning Regulation 32, wherein is a procurement which was done by another organ of state. So because that's where another problem is taking place, because now you'll go to one Umsunduzi municipality without checking what was the value of that particular bid or tender, and then you want to implement it in situ of Johannesburg. So those are the challenges of Regulation 32 as well as Regulation 36, because we need to make sure if ever we go to that particular municipality, we have to check if ever the service provider, when he or she was appointed, due processes of supply chain were followed or not. If ever no, then you cannot implement it in your own municipality. So Regulation 32 of the MFMA and Regulation 36 are a little bit a challenge. That is why they are highly abused. And then coming to your question, in our municipality, which is City of Johannesburg, there is a process within the group audit. There is a unit that is called probity, which is assisting us in terms of supply chain processes, especially when we go to big committees. For each and every committee, let's say bid specification committee, there will be a probity. When you go to bid evaluation, there will be a probity. Why probity? To make sure that processes are followed so that we don't experience any irregular expenditure. So probity plays a critical role within our municipality, and they are assisting us a lot in terms of curbing irregular expenses.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I see we have at least around 5 minutes left. Just to get a closing statement from you, ladies and gentlemen, Can you just be quick and swift? What lessons can we learn from the past years of public preferential procurement act that we had before? What lessons can we learn so that we can implement them with the new act that is coming into place? Can it please be short? I will start with you, Mr. Sabata, John, and then we'll end with our good dog. Just a quick one, please.
Okay, my last point it would be, because we didn't talk about private-public partnerships, because currently we are aware that government is having some financial constraints. All the government departments, there is a deficit in all the budgets, and National Treasury is pushing that we must start to do triple Ps. But within the municipalities, there is a challenge, because now you've got municipal triple Ps regulations, which is contradicting with Municipal Systems Act, and also contradicting with Municipal Finance Management Act section 120. So it will be very good if ever the public procurement act comes to effect, so that all these challenges are sorted. Thanks.
Thank you very much. A quick one from you, Mr. Modise.
Yes, Sam. I'm quite excited and looking forward to this new Public Procurement Act. I am wary, and I agree with you when you ask a question on over-regulation. I'm wary of these regulations, because when you look at all the regulations, they were a good documents, well written and technical. But in terms of follow-up, I think South Africa, we suffer from the same thing with our government, that we are good in writing good English, but then in terms of measuring that which we have written, how was it implemented? Before we started, I indicated the issue of the PPA, that there is not enough engagement with the procurement practitioners that has taken place. I'm hoping that National Treasury will address that, because you cannot leave the implementers of that which you try to regulate behind, because then you're going to have another legislation on top of the legislation that we have. So that will be my advice to National Treasury, to say maybe hold on it a bit, let the procurement practitioners go into it in detail and have questions, and those questions be attended to, so that by the time then the president signs it into implementation, we have people that know exactly what is expected of them, and easy to educate the public in terms of how that Public Procurement Act is going to then impact on societal issues and so forth. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Modise. And yourself, Doc, last few words, just swiftly and quickly there.
Okay, thank you. What I've learned, as I've indicated, that it's a lot of fragmentation in terms of the current legislation, and we are looking forward to the implementation of the new act. For me, I've also learned that what is advocating more especially is the issue of digitization, and also integrated governance and inclusive growth. So that is what we are looking forward to in terms of the new act, and also to understand that the future of supply chain in South Africa is not only about acquiring goods and services, it's about building transparent, technological enabled and inclusive systems that works for every citizen in South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thank you, my guest, Mr. Sabata. Thank you, Mr. Modise. Thank you, Doc. The reality that we face in South Africa is that we have a lot of issues when it comes to public procurement. We are always seeing your issues of procurement on the news each and every day. But the truth of the matter is as well that our future is in your hands. You are the ones who are championing service delivery for all of us, and what your work is about and what you do affects each and every one of us. So hopefully you will be championing service delivery with regards to the new public procurement act that is put into place. I think it's Act 28 of 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time. I thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you very much, and goodbye.